The movie begins by showing Benjamin Ramsey, also known as Ben, being forced to leave his ex-girlfriend Aurora's house. He's kicked out by her because she has a new boyfriend, who is much better than Ben, who has been unemployed for years. Ben, who has nowhere to go, tries to contact his friend named Miles for help, but because Ben still owes money, Miles refuses to help. Shortly after Ben ends his call with Miles, his belongings are stolen by a pickpocket, which leaving him with only an old cell phone. In his despair, another friend of Ben's named Frank calls him and asks Ben to meet him to offer him a job. Because he has no other choice, Ben immediately goes to their meeting place with Frank. Unfortunately, during his journey, Ben is robbed by a young man who threatens him with a knife, demanding Ben to hand over his wallet. Ben immediately hands over his empty wallet to the robber before he decides to run away. When Ben meets Frank about the job he has to do, Frank asks Ben to wear a costume because they will be street performers cosplaying as fictional characters. At that moment, Frank gives instructions to Ben and says they will split the earnings fairly. Although Ben feels uncomfortable with the job, he reluctantly agrees to do it to earn some money to survive. After wearing a costume provided by Frank, Ben starts cosplaying on the sidewalk until some people enthusiastically take pictures with him. Several hours later, Ben's job ends and Frank, who previously said they would split the earnings equally, actually takes more profit from Ben. Despite receiving little pay, Ben accepts it and walks away, wondering where he will sleep that night. As he passes a street, two thugs suddenly approach and beat Ben mercilessly for no apparent reason, even causing him to lose consciousness. The next morning, Ben was awakened by a homeless person who seemed concerned about Ben's condition lying on the side of the road. The homeless person even gave Ben a drink. As a gratitude, Ben gave his remaining money to the homeless person, who then gave a pair of jeans to Ben before leaving the place. Without suspicion, Ben immediately put on the jeans and went to the doctor to get checked because he was worried about his condition after being beaten up by street thugs. From the examination results, the doctor didn't find any injuries, which confused Ben. When Ben was about to pay the examination fee, he didn't expect it to be quite expensive, so the hospital administrative staff scolded him for not paying the bill. Panicked, Ben then reached into his jeans pocket to show that he really didn't have money, but he was surprised to find some money in his pocket and he managed to pay all hospital bills. After Ben left the hospital, he accidentally met Nelson, an old friend from his past as a drug dealer. Because of that dark past, Ben felt uncomfortable meeting Nelson, fearing he might be drawn back into illegal activities. However, Nelson seemed cheerful, especially after seeing Ben holding some money, and without hesitation, Nelson asked Ben to buy him lunch at a restaurant. At that moment, Ben couldn't refuse Nelson's request and agreed to his old friend's request. Shortly after, they both enjoyed the ordered food until Nelson suddenly received a phone call from Glitch, his boss as a drug dealer who was also once Ben's boss. Nelson told Glitch that he was with Ben, so Ben was forced to talk to his former boss, who asked him to come to his headquarters. Not long after arriving at Glitch's headquarters, Ben received an offer from his former boss to return to work as a drug dealer, but Ben seemed not to listen to Glitch after being fascinated by a woman named Nova, who was also a drug dealer. While Ben was paying attention to her, his attention was diverted by two loan sharks named Stephen and Miguel, who came to collect debts from Glitch. After getting some money from Glitch, the two loan sharks then asked Ben to talk outside the headquarters, where Ben was beaten up for not giving them money. After that, Stephen and Miguel checked Ben's pants pockets until they found some money, making them finally leave him, who wondered why he still had money when he remembered he had used all his money to pay the hospital bills and treat Nelson. As he feels directionless, Ben is seen boarding the subway until he falls asleep and dreams about his jeans that can generate a lot of money. Shortly after, Ben wakes up and arrives at a station. He walks out while pondering the meaning of his dream and reaches into his pants pocket. Unexpectedly, he pulled out some money. Because of this, Ben starts to believe that his pocket can continuously generate money, and he decides to buy various things he desires, from clothes, a guitar, to going to a cafe to enjoy his favorite food. With endless money, Ben stays at a luxurious 5-star hotel and buys his dream car. Several days later, Ben, relaxing at the hotel, and calls his father, Mason Ramsey, to assure him that he is doing well. Ben also asks his father to take care of his health, because he wants Mason to be there for every important moment in Ben's life, especially after Ben's biological mother passed away. Shortly after ending his call with Mason, Ben goes to an art gallery without worrying if they will kick him out like before when he didn't have money. While enjoying his drink, Ben is surprised by the presence of Nova and her father, Clint, who also come to the gallery to see the art exhibition. At that moment, Ben keeps looking at Nova from afar, captivated by her beauty, until she notices that he is watching her. After that, Nova approaches Ben, who, although nervous, tries to seize the opportunity to get close to her, even inviting her to go out together. Along the way, Ben takes the opportunity to stop by Miles's house and pay off all his debts before spending time alone with Nova. Unfortunately, their time together has to end after Nova receives a call from Clint asking her to come home immediately, so Ben reluctantly lets her leave. The next day, Ben takes Miles to a cafe where he tells him about the miracle of his genes that can generate a lot of money every hour. Miles initially doesn't believe him and thinks Ben is making up a story until he eventually proves it, not expecting it to be true. Ben also shows Miles the luxurious hotel where he stays, leaving Miles amazed. After that, Ben lets Miles wait on the sofa while he showers, and unexpectedly, Glitch suddenly enters the room and beats up Miles without any clear reason. Upon hearing the commotion, Ben immediately comes out of the bathroom to check on the situation, but he is also attacked by Glitch, who is angry because Ben approached Nova. Before leaving, Glitch warns Ben not to flirt with Nova. If Ben insists on approaching the woman he likes, Glitch admits that he won't hesitate to harm Ben. After that incident, Ben felt very frustrated, so he invited Miles to relieve stress by having drinks at the bar. When Ben was in the car on the way back to the hotel with Miles, while getting drunk, he called Nova and accused her of informing Glitch about his whereabouts, leading Glitch to come to the hotel and beat him and Miles. At that moment, Nova denied the accusation, but Ben ignored her explanation and chose to end his call. Shortly after, Stephen and his henchmen entered Ben's car to extort money and hijack his car. Ben and Miles tried to resist, so Stephen and the others electrocuted both friends until they passed out. The next morning, Ben and Miles, who just regained consciousness, were shocked to realize they were tied to a tree in the middle of the desert. They tried hard to free themselves, and after several hours of trying, the two friends finally managed to untie the ropes binding them and walk to find the nearest help. During their journey, Miles asked Ben to contact the police, but Ben instead called Nova, which made Miles angry, and he immediately grabbed Ben's phone, which he then used to call the police. Unfortunately, because Miles panicked, he provided unclear information, so the police hung up on him. As a result, they both had to walk until the day started to darken to reach the nearest gas station and take a rest. At that time, Ben took the opportunity to call his stepmother, Melody, and ask about his father's condition, who turned out to be sick. Worried about Mason's condition, Ben and Miles decided to visit Mason that same night, and luckily, they got a ride from someone heading to the area where Mason lived. Upon arriving home, Ben asked Miles and Melody to leave him with Mason, whose condition was worsening. At that moment, Ben became even sadder after learning that Mason was diagnosed to only have a few months left to live. Sometime later, Ben and Miles said goodbye to go back, and because the hotel where Ben stayed was deemed unsafe, Ben decided to stay temporarily at Miles's residence. When they arrived at Miles's house, they were surprised to find Nova waiting for them. Miles immediately told Ben to chase her away because she was considered the source of their problems, especially after Miles found out that Stefan was intentionally sent by Nova's father. Nevertheless, Ben refused to chase Nova away. He even begged Miles to allow her to stay with them. Seeing his friend pleading with him, Miles finally decided to let Nova stay at his house. After that, Ben felt happy with Miles' decision because he could be affectionate with Nova without worrying about being beaten up by Glitch. They both then slept together until Nova suddenly found money in Ben's pants pocket, so he told her about his magical pants that continuously produce money. After knowing this, she invited Ben and Miles to go to the casino so they could double Ben's money. With Nova's skill in playing poker and various other gambling games, the three of them were able to win various games, even winning horse racing bets. A few days later, Ben and the others enjoyed their money by dining at a fancy restaurant. Unfortunately, Ben and Nova had to leave and part ways with Miles after Ben saw Glitch's car around the restaurant. After that, Ben saw the homeless man who had given him the jeans, so he and Nova tried to chase after the homeless man, who quickly disappeared at the intersection, leaving only a bag containing several pairs of jeans. At that moment, Nova suggested that Ben take all the pants, which might have the same magic as his jeans. Upon arriving at Miles's house, Ben and the others tried on all the pants in the homeless man's bag, but they were all just regular jeans. Shortly after, the three of them, feeling bored, decided to play ball in the yard. While Miles and Nova were busy playing, Ben tried to contact Melody about his father's condition and advise him to listen to Melody, who was taking care of him. On the other hand, unbeknownst to Ben and the others, their activities were being monitored by Clint's henchmen. That night, Ben suddenly received a call from Glitch stating that he had kidnapped Mason and Melody because Ben did not stay away from Nova. At that moment, Glitch demanded a ransom if Ben wanted to free his parents. Knowing about this, Nova said that she would help Ben rescue Mason and Melody. Several days later, Clint received a letter from Nova asking for his help to free Ben's parents, who were held captive by Glitch. Meanwhile, Ben, traveling with Nova and Miles to Glitch's headquarters, tried to contact Mason's phone, which was now in Glitch's possession. After that, Glitch answered Ben's call and instructed him to come to the headquarters if Ben didn't want anything to happen to Mason and Melody. Following the plan, Ben decided to part ways with his friends because he intended to meet Clint and borrow some money that he would use to ransom his parents. Initially, Clint refused to help Ben, but after Ben conveyed Nova's message, Clint finally agreed to assist. At that moment, Clint, aware that Ben was with Nova, warned Ben not to hurt his daughter because Clint would always be watching him. On the other hand, Glitch was keeping an eye on Mason and Melody with his henchmen. Shortly after, Nova and Miles arrived at Glitch's headquarters, and she got into a shootout with Glitch's henchmen. Unfortunately, Nova was captured by Glitch, who then took her away from the headquarters. At the same time, Clint was still curious why Glitch demanded a considerable ransom, so Ben informed him that Glitch was tired of being his subordinate and was eyeing Clint's position as the leader of the illegal drug trade in the area. Therefore, Glitch needed some money to eliminate Clint. During their conversation, they were both surprised by Glitch's arrival with Nova. Clint quickly grabbed his pistol and aimed it at Glitch, but Glitch threatened to shoot Nova as he did to Ben's parents if he didn't get the ransom money he requested. Upon hearing this, Ben became even more emotional and wanted to eliminate Glitch immediately. Fortunately, Glitch was eventually subdued by Clint and his henchmen, while Nova immediately hugged Ben. In the end of the film, it shows Ben and Nova living with Miles in a beachside house, where Ben decided not to rely on his magic jeans anymore, so he threw them away. Miles, disagreeing with his friend's decision, hurried to retrieve the jeans, which were taken by someone else. Meanwhile, Glitch was seen tied to a tree in the desert, just like Ben and Miles had experienced.